We've spoken about this essential need for somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. What are some tactical, practical tips that I can help you with so that you can start getting that better quantity and quality of sleep tonight? I think the best single piece of advice that I can give to try to improve your sleep starting tonight is regularity. Go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. No matter whether it's the weekday or the weekend, or even if you've had a bad night of sleep, regularity is king, and it will anchor your sleep and improve the quantity and the quality of that sleep. And the reason is that inside of the brain, there is a master 24-hour clock, and it expects regularity and thrives best and responds best under conditions of regularity. And it includes the control of our sleep-wake rhythms. And when we give our brain the signals of regularity, including waking up at the same time and going to bed at the same time, that can improve the chances for enhanced sleep quantity and also sleep quality. So many of us, when we get into bed and we turn out the light, we expect sleep to be a little bit like a light switch, that we should be immediately able to fall asleep. In fact, as a physiological process, sleep is much more similar to landing a plane. You gradually need time to descend down onto the firm bedrock of good sleep at night. And so here, the suggestion is develop some kind of a wind down routine. Develop some kind of gradual sleep ritual. Some people like to take a bath or a shower. Other people like to do light stretching and just sort of light body movement. Other people like to try meditation. And in fact, meditation has been proven to be hugely powerful for your ability to fall asleep more easily, including in people suffering from insomnia. Or even just starting to read a book. Try to institute that same sleep routine time and time again. And gradually it will give your body the chance to go through that physiological sort of power down routine, as it were. Another possible wind down routine tip is in the last sort of hour or the 2 hours before bed, just set aside maybe 5 minutes and sit there with a pad of paper or a tablet and just write down all of the concerns that you have, the things that you think, oh, I've got to do this, or I should have done that, or I need to do more of this tomorrow. And it's like catharsis. It's almost like vomiting out your anxiety onto the page. And it sounds a little bit hokey, but it turns out scientific studies have been done on this wind down tool. It's called a worry journal. And if you institute it, it seems to improve the likelihood of you being able to fall asleep easy, and if you wake up at night, being able to fall back asleep. Keep it cool. And what I mean by this is set your bedroom temperature to the appropriate level. And it's colder than you would think. What we found is that the optimal temperature for good sleep is somewhere around 67 degrees Fahrenheit, or a little bit more than 18 degrees Celsius. And the reason is because your brain and your body need to drop their core temperature by about 1 degree Celsius, or about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit, for you to initiate sleep, for you to first fall asleep, and for you to then stay asleep across the night. And this is the reason that you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold than too hot. Because the room that's too cold is at least taking you in the right temperature direction for good sleep. Another interesting thing that you can do regarding temperature is have a warm bath or a shower before bed. Sometimes when we do that, we get out of the bath and we think that we're all warm and toasty, and the reason that we perhaps have a better night of sleep is because we were nice and warm coming out of the bath. But it's actually the opposite reason, because when you're in the bath, what you encourage is for all of the blood to come out of the core of your body and rise to the surface of your skin. Then, because all of the blood is at the surface of your skin, it evacuates all of the heat from the body. So as a result, when you get out of that bath or the warm shower, your core body temperature actually plummets. It sounds almost like a wives' tale, but it's actually scientifically grounded. It's called the warm bath effect for improved sleep quantity and quality. We are a dark-deprived society in this modern era, and we need darkness specifically at night to trigger the release of a sleep timing hormone called melatonin. Try to be a little bit mindful, particularly in the last hour before bed. Try to dim down half of the lights in your house. You may actually be quite surprised at how sleepy that can start to make you feel. And in part, it's because the brain is finally getting the signal of darkness or even dusk that it needs to gradually begin releasing melatonin. Even a bedside table lamp can be emitting a level of lux light intensity that can stamp the brakes on melatonin. Another thing, of course, are the screens and the devices that we use in the last hour before bed. So try to stay away from your computer in the last hour. Stay away from those iPad screens on full brightness. If you have to use those devices, firstly, try to dim down the brightness. If you're going to use your computer during the evening, you can install certain software, and those will try to take away the blue light. And the reason is because it seems to be that it's the blue light in particular that has a damaging effect. But overall, light exposure in the evening in general is non-optimal for our sleep. Now, the last thing I would note regarding light is that we can reverse engineer the trick when it comes to morning time. And so now the morning is the moment where we should have as much exposure to light as possible. And not just indoor light, but outdoor light. Even on a cloudy, dark day, the brightness outside is usually far more powerful than the brightness of even the brightest indoor lights. And we need that brightness during the morning hours to help us keep our circadian 24-hour rhythm regular. And as a general rule of thumb, try to stay away from caffeine in the afternoon and in the evening. And if you really want to have a glass of alcohol one night or a couple of nights during the week, try to make sure that you don't go to bed tipsy. That's a cardinal sign that you've probably had too much to drink, and it will impact your sleep at night. And then finally, related to those substances is nicotine. Nicotine is an activating chemical, and it can actually stimulate the brain and make it more challenging to fall asleep. If you are using nicotine patches or nicotine gum, or you're a smoker, just try to be mindful of abstaining from nicotine consumption or nicotine ingestion in the hours before bed. Sleeping pills, and both the older sleeping pills and more of the newer sleeping pills on the market, they're a little bit similar to alcohol. They are in a class of drugs that we call the sedative hypnotics. And those don't necessarily work to produce naturalistic sleep. They just stop the firing of the brain. They shut the brain down. Sleeping pills have been associated on average with issues with learning and memory and also forgetfulness. There have been some studies that have linked the use of sleeping pills to a higher risk of mortality and also a higher risk of cancer. If you are thinking about sleeping pills, or if you're using sleeping pills and you want to have a discussion perhaps about modifying that sleeping pill use, the best advice is go and see your doctor and then see what their best recommendation is. Try to limit the bed to simply trying to sleep and also to intimacy. Those are the only two things that we typically recommend for bed use. So try to resist the urge to, for example, be working on the bed or eating on the bed or even watching television on the bed. It's okay if you want to tuck yourself up and just have a little bit of a read of a book. If that helps you drift off, that's fine. But don't associate your bedroom and particularly being on your bed with these major activities of watching television, working, or eating. Those things are going to confuse your brain. It's going to keep associating the bed with everything else other than a good, sound night of sleep. If, for example, you're having one of those nights where you're trying to fall asleep and you're just not catching that sort of sleep train, as it were, or you've woken back up in the middle of the night and you just can't get back asleep, the general rule of thumb is that after about 25 to 30 minutes, you should normally get out of bed and go and do something different. And the reason is that your brain is an incredibly associative device. And very quickly, it will start to learn an association between your bed being the trigger of wakefulness rather than sound sleep. And we need to break that association. You would never sit at a dinner table waiting to get hungry. So why would you lie in bed waiting to get sleepy? And the answer is you shouldn't. Understand that this is okay. It's normal. Many people will have these nights. Go to a different room and in dim light, just read a book or maybe listen to the radio or a podcast. Don't check your phone, don't check email, and also don't fall into the temptation of eating because that will create a habit that will wake you up. Instead, just do something relaxing. You can do light stretches, for example, and only return to bed when you are sleepy. And gradually, you will relearn the association that your bed is this place of sound sleep. If you're interested in sleep tracking, there are lots of different options out there. Things such as smart rings, for example, or even head devices or smart mattresses that are starting to emerge. I think you just need to ask yourself, what do you feel comfortable with? What do you think is going to be something that is not distracting or gets in the way of your sleep, but is complementary and may enhance your sleep? Because that's one of the benefits of sleep tracking. Using sleep trackers gives us a historical record of our sleep. We can look to see if there are things in our lives that we've been experiencing that go hand in hand with changes in our sleep. Things that we've been doing that resulted in our sleep becoming better, or things that we were doing that resulted in our sleep getting worse. Maybe we switched our exercise schedule to a different time of day, and for us personally, that's not good, and we saw that our sleep declined. Or we started to eat something different, and our sleep improved. This is how sleep can actually be beneficial if you track it with these types of wearables. So these are tactical tips that you can use to start improving your sleep quality tonight. But if you have a sleep disorder, then these things may not necessarily help you. And here the analogy would be, let's say that I'm your athletic sports performance coach, and I'm giving you all of these tips to improve your performance. But if you have a broken ankle, none of those tips are going to help. We need to get you to a doctor so that we can treat the broken ankle before we can come back to these tips. And it's the same way with sleep disorders. So if you think you've got something such as insomnia or sleep apnea, heavy snoring, or restless leg syndrome, any one of these things that sounds familiar, please go to see your doctor, inquire about potential diagnosis of your sleep disorder, and when that's treated, we can return and revisit these tips for better sleep. And if you're concerned about whether or not your problems with sleep would classify you as suffering from insomnia, we will leave in your workbook a short questionnaire called the Insomnia Severity Index. And you can just fill this out and you'll get a score at the end, and that can give you some guidance as to where you're at as potentially suffering from or not suffering from insomnia. And if you are, you can always take that test result to your doctor and then have a conversation.